Gavin, James and Colin. I'm delighted to be joined today by Bernadette Phillips. Bernadette is a social scientist from County Waterford, and she's a good friend of mine from the general election where we met for the first time, and I found her to be incredibly engaging, somebody who cares about human rights and cares about the issues that affect real people in the world. And actually, to be honest, the only person that I met in that Count Centre that came across as somebody outside of the political system that wanted to bring a change that we all see is needed in Waterford and in Ireland. And so I felt that upon seeing that we have a new government being formed, that it would be a very appropriate time to bring Bernadette onto the show, introduce her to the viewers, and get her take on what this coalition means for us. You know, it's the first time since the Rainbow Coalition that we have a three-party coalition. And as our former Taoiseach Leo Varadkar said, it's the end to civil war politics. So what does this all mean? What will it mean for us as people living at home who are wondering what's going to happen with our economy post-COVID-19, or wondering when can things get back to normal, or is this the new normal? Was the old normal okay? It's so confusing. But Bernadette, it's great to have you on the show. I'm so happy for you to be here.
Thank you. It's fantastic to be here. Thanks for that lovely introduction as well.
So can you break it all down for us? What does it mean?
Oh my goodness me. What I will do, I was looking at this programme for government as I've read through it a few times now.
Right.
And it talks about a defining moment, for the country, and that we're facing the challenges and that touch every person, every community. So it's saying the right things in this, isn't it? As we go. It talks about well-being indicators as well as economic indicators. It talks about recovery. It talks about a balanced recovery. Okay, so it mentions all of those things. It mentions well-being. My goodness me, in a programme for government, you know. But I suppose what we have to do is unpack that in relation to the reality that means, and take it back to the formation of the government itself. I mean, we waited over 140 days after the general election to actually have a government formed, and in the interim of what was happening and the parties and coming together. And I suppose I was looking at the negotiations, and I was looking at who was included in it and who was excluded from it. And I believe in democracy. And first of all, I believe that every party should have been involved in the conversation. So I need to lay that ground rule for myself, so that I'm sharing that experience, because having been part of the general election, canvassing, listening to the issues that were there, the reality of people's lives on the doors that I spoke to, and the call for change, and in looking at the formation of it, the exclusion of Sinn Féin from those negotiations, though I was running as an independent, I believe in fairness, and I felt that was a shame that they weren't included. Okay, so from that premise, we go on, and we have a formation now of the two old Civil War parties, as they're known, and the Greens. Okay, so bringing in a new kind of dynamic.
And did you ever see this formation actually happening, that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael would come together in this way and now promise us change?
I did, actually. I did. I did. When you unpack what change means as well, change is an interesting word.
True.
Change can be negative or positive, you know. So when we call for that, we have to be careful what we're calling for. And I saw the formation of coming together, particularly Sinn Féin got a very, very sizable first preference vote, 24 point whatever %, which was massive. So it meant that there was a lot of people out there who were looking in a new direction for a new alternative. Okay, so they were voting on that basis, and equally for the Green Party, they were voting for change, because the transfers along the lines of transfer left included the Green Party, you know,
Yeah.
when people voted, because people were voting for a change. We've been looking at a decade of austerity. We've been looking at how detrimental that has been to people's lives, to communities, who, by the way, have not ever recovered from it. Okay?
Right.
We heard a lot about recovery, and we're in
Mm-hmm.
recovery mode from government, but there's whole communities that have never recovered from the austerity, from recession.
Mm-hmm.
So we were listening to that, and people were watching waiting lists grow. They were watching the housing crisis escalate, going up 300 and nearly 400%, you know, in a few years. And people were watching all of the health issues, and so they said we need change. And so I was sad about that. So if you ask me now, what does it mean going forward?
Mm.
It means that we're still left with a lot of issues that haven't been dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people's lives that haven't been given a new window of change and opportunity. So while this program for government talks about well-being and recovery and balanced regional development and these things, in reality, when you unpack it, I mean, I looked at it for the constituency that I could have represented, you know, Waterford City and County, and I looked at the southeast region, and I couldn't really see an awful lot in there in that program for government for that region. So, so when we begin to unpack, and I think it's really important that we're talking to the listeners here and people, you know, or have an awareness about something or a consciousness about something, is that the devil's always in the detail, you know, and the detail's not in the program for government. It's not even costed, by the way. Not even costed.
Now,
Okay.
Bernadette, so what would you say to somebody who's listening at home who says, you know, let's take them at their word? You know, as you said, and I would agree with you, the language that's in that agreement or that program for government is quite positive. It talks about these different things that we need to address, addressing well-being, addressing a climate crisis through a Green New Deal. The language is there. So what would you say to some, maybe a younger person who listens to the show who says, let's take them at their word?
Actions always speak louder than words, Colin. And I suppose when you get to the stage that I'm at in life, you really know that that's true, you know. And what were the actions previously, okay, of these particular parties? What do they actually do on the ground for people in real terms? You know, and when they spoke about recovery, who and what were they talking about?
Yeah, we heard this language before, keep the recovery going. That's an old slogan coming back.
That's an old slogan. So the word recovery is not new. And when you begin to unpack the program, there's not an awful lot new in it, really, okay? And there may be the Green New Deal, and there may be the, you know, the hope or the aspiration for the 7% per annum of the you know, all of that to help things, you know, the
carbon emissions
and all of that. But in reality, what does it mean? Because that's what I look at for people's lives. When I talk to people, I say, what does this mean for real change for you? And when I talk about real change, I mean quality of life change. So I'd say to people, look at that. So rather than taking at the word, look at the actions.
Yeah.
Look at the previous actions as well, and see of the radical shift it would take for the government policies to change, to mean real change.